What is going on, YouTube? Andrew Miller from hook'emheadlines.com coming back at y'all today with post-game reaction video, some notes, breakdown of Texas's really impressive and dominant 20-point win over the top-seeded Kansas Jayhawks in the final round of the Big 12 tournament today. Texas moves to 26-8 on the season with, I would say, its most complete and impressive victory of the season. Another 15-plus point win over the Jayhawks, the second consecutive weekend the Longhorns are able to do so. I tweeted out a multitude of numbers that I thought were impressive for the Longhorns after this game. One of the, if I look back on it, it's not that surprising, but to the same note, it is all the more impressive for the Longhorns to be able to accomplish this feat. But Texas is the first team since Kansas joined the Big 12 to be able to beat them by 15-plus points, not just on back-to-back weekends, but even within the same month, and in the last decade within the same season. I don't know how else to put that. I will say this, that, Big 12 teams play each other 3 times if they end up meeting in the Big 12 tournament in the same season. So Texas went 2-1 against the Jayhawks this season. But, I'll get into this note here in a little bit. It's not even a note. It's more of a rant about, just probably what the selection committee is going to end up doing tomorrow on Selection Sunday. But Texas ends up beating Kansas by a combined margin of 36 points in the last 2 weekends. There's a lot of sit back and just kind of enjoy what Texas was able to do if you're a Texas basketball fan. But I can't say enough about Rodney Terry and the staff's preparation, honestly, for the Jayhawks in the last two times these two teams have met. Texas has found a way to completely stifle the Jayhawks. Jalen Wilson had a big game today, but to say that the rest of the supporting cast didn't do much is an understatement. Texas is able to hold Kansas under 60 points in back-to-back games. That in and of itself is a huge feat. I heard a lot about that, this was going to be a major home court advantage for the Jayhawks. And if you looked at the stands, most of the fans were wearing blue. And, Texas has struggled at times to play ranked opponents away from home this season. But this game didn't look anything like that, anything like any version of a Texas team that has struggled to play away from the Moody Center. This looked like the best version of a Texas team at the Moody Center this season. A few of my game notes in particular, just more statistics based from this game. Texas was really, really good shooting from the field, especially within the arc, or within the 2-point arc in this game. 50% shooting from the field. They only went 4 of 17 from 3. Actually, both teams ended up going 4 of 17 from 3, so both teams were struggling to shoot from deep. Texas really struggled to shoot from beyond the arc throughout the entire Big 12 tournament, though. So this was nothing new. This was actually an improvement compared to the last game where they shot 2 of 14 from beyond the arc in the win over TCU. Free throws weren't really a huge factor in this one because throughout the entire Big 12 tournament, the refs were letting a lot of contact go. I guess from one perspective, at least, it was very consistent. Can't really complain about that. But Texas still was efficient from the free throw line, 10 of 12 for 83%. I believe Texas outshot every team they played in the Big 12 tournament from the free throw line, which was an important factor in the last few games. Texas was able to turn Kansas over 15 times. Kansas of late has not been a team that's made many untimely turnovers, but Texas, again, played some disruptive perimeter defense, got 17 points off of turnovers in this game compared to only 4 for the Jayhawks. So really opportune with the turnovers they did get. And then one of the biggest storylines, I think, from the last few games was Texas's ability to win the battle on the glass. Guys like Dylan Dessou, Christian Bishop, Serge Rice, Brock Cunningham. I would say Brock Cunningham more than anyone else in this game. Really making positive contributions on the glass. Texas out-rebounds Kansas 37-31 in this game. That includes 10 offensive rebounds, 5 of which came from Brock Cunningham. Other than that, I would just say one of the biggest things for Texas, again, was milking that advantage coming off the bench. You know, I named it after Kansas beat Texas by, I think it was 8 points when these two teams first met this season. Kansas's bench actually outscored Texas's. And if you know the bench scoring numbers for teams in the Big 12 this season, you know how kind of backward that is. Kansas was the only team scoring in the single digits in terms of bench points per game this season. Meanwhile, Texas was like 30 points a game in terms of bench scoring, especially in conference play. The bench only picked up because Serge Rice just was so good coming off the bench throughout Big 12 play. Christian Bishop was also a big boost as well. Brock Cunningham providing a boost at times. And in the tournament, Arterio Morris really stepping up. I think he played fewer than 20 minutes in every single game in the Big 12 tournament, but he had at least 8 points in every single game. I want to say he had at least one steal in every game, if not two. Let me see how many he ended up with here today. Yeah, 2 steals on the day. I would have to look back at the last few games for him, but the fact of the matter is that he provided the type of boost that Texas needed off the bench with Serge Rice in the starting 5. They needed someone in that backcourt unit to be able to step up and really take control if, let's say Marcus Carr was cold shooting from the field. Tyrese Hunter was ice cold from the field in this game. 0 of 8 from the field, 0 of 4 from beyond the arc. His offensive momentum really stalled out in this one. And so, again, Arterio Morris providing the type of two-way impact that he did in this game was huge. So, I usually do my studs and duds pieces after every game, or my studs and duds piece after every win for Texas, to be more specific. I did not do that today. I did my 3 takeaways because there were some rants I wanted to get off my chest. I will save that for the very end. I'll do my studs and duds. I do still have my list. It's pretty crystal clear for me today. Not crystal clear because I think there's, I'll go through 3 studs and 1 dud, along with a few honorable mentions. My first stud is Dylan Dessou. He's been a stud in every single game for me this tournament. Finishes up with 18 points, a team high, 7 of 9 shooting from the field, a perfect 4 from the line, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 steal. He did have 3 turnovers, but 1 or 2 of them were kind of off bad or untimely passes. I believe 1 was off an offensive foul that was kind of a soft call. That was either this game or the last game, but I will say with Dylan Dessou, it does feel like for some reason the refs are really light on their whistle. But I don't need to go into a rant about that. Dessou, again, comes up with 18 points in 21 minutes, 6 rebounds, which was, I think, second best on the team in this game. And he just really controlled the paint. All of his production came either from the line or within the 2-point arc. That floater he has, that one-handed floater, is starting to become pretty famous, I think, after the last few games. But he's been money shooting from, really within 8 feet from the basket in the last, 6 or 8 games. And he really has been all season. I think if I dug back into the numbers there, I would find a lot of efficient stats. But just in the last half dozen games, he ranks in the 98th percentile or better in terms of field goal percentage from within the paint and at the rim, which is really, really impressive and something that Texas really needed with Timmy Allen out these last few games. Another stud for me, I could, if I had to go 2 studs, my second one would be Marcus Carr, but Serge Rice and Marcus Carr were both tremendous in this game. After they both were kind of sleepy in the first 2 games of the Big 12 tournament in terms of offensive efficiency and just scoring spark, they were efficient, solid, very productive in this game. Really kind of provided that steadiness, that energy that Texas needed from the backcourt and the wing rotation. I say within the rotation, but they both played it 36 minutes or more, so they really never left the floor in this game. Marcus Carr, I'd have to look back at the numbers, but I know he didn't come off the floor really at all in one of the games in the Big 12 tournament. He essentially played an Iron Man these last 3 games. while he wasn't stuffing the stat sheet with defensive numbers in this game like he was in the last two. If you watch the game, you can still tell he was very, very disruptive. This is a pretty solid backcourt unit for the Jayhawks. And while, yes, Joseph Yesufu had 11 points, I think he was in the starting lineup in this game. DeJuan Harris has had a really rough run at it in the last couple of outings against Texas, and I give a ton of that credit to guys like Tyrese Hunter and Marcus Carr on the defensive end. DeJuan Harris finishes up with 6 points, 4 assists, 4 turnovers. For a guy that's been pretty efficient and a really good facilitator for the Jayhawks this season, that really just goes to show the type of impact that Marcus Carr and Tyrese Hunter were having on the defensive end of the floor. On the offensive end, again, Marcus Carr goes 8 of 15 shooting from the field. Completely broke out of the slump that he was in on offense. He was shooting no better than 30% from the field. I think it was in the last 4 or 5 games, and no better than 22.2% from deep. And he hit 1 of 3 from beyond the arc, so nothing crazy there. But it was really, really impressive to see a lot of what Carr was doing, finishing through contact, driving to the rim, and really just making plays for this offense. Oftentimes when it looked like there was nothing available, kind of making something out of nothing. And he really did it while playing mostly mistake-free basketball in this game. 3 assists, 1 turnover. I think one of the most overlooked parts of Marcus Carr's game this season is he's had one of the best assist-to-turnover ratios of any starting guard in the Big 12 this season. He's been around that 2 to 2.5 mark. And for a guy that's that high of usage, there's really maybe 1 or 2 other players that are that efficient when you're talking about, keeping turnovers down. And so, seeing Marcus Carr do that against a variety of different teams that are, really kind of difficult to face on the defensive end. It's, I guess, for Texas on the offensive end, but it is really it's really difficult to be able to get that done, especially when you're slumping in terms of your shooting efficiency from the field. And again, can't say enough about the way that Marcus Carr was able to step up, even when he was cold shooting from the field, was finding other ways to contribute, had 9 steals in the first 2 games of the Big 12 tournament, so was really finding ways to be disruptive on the defensive end. I'll digress on the Marcus Carr flattery, but I thought he was awesome. In the last game and a half, and through and through, I have to admire his resilience, perseverance to just find ways to contribute, just, get it done any way Texas needed to. So Serge Barry Rice is going to be my other stud. Again, I mentioned I'll do 3 studs, 1 dud, because he was really good in this game too. Rice was pretty cold shooting from the field, to be honest, in the first 2 games of the Big 12 tournament. I don't know if it was just slow adjustments to being in the starting 5 and getting the level of minutes he was in the first 2 games, if teams were just adjusting to him, or maybe some combination of everything that, sometimes good scorers go cold. But he definitely found his rhythm in this game. This was another guy that, Serge Barry Rice was my dud in the second game of the Big 12 tournament, but it's a similar story to Marcus Carr, where, even though he was cold shooting from the field, he was finding a lot of ways to contribute on the defensive end. I think he had 3 steals and 2 blocks in the win over TCU, even though he was shooting somewhere in the ballpark of 2 of 13 from the field or something like that. He made 6 field goals with more than 20 attempts in the first 2 games of the Big 12 tournament. That's just going off the top of my head. Again, finding other ways to contribute. But in this game, shoots 7 of 12 from the field, perfect 3 of 3 from the line, 17 points, 3 assists, just 1 turnover, 1 steal, a plus 17 on the floor. So through and through, very solid performance from Serge Barry Rice. I have a lot of positive things to say about him. Honorable mentions here definitely go to Arterio Morris. Again, I gushed over him earlier. 8 points, 3 of 5 shooting from the field, 2 steals. He did have 2 turnovers, but one of those, he was a little bit out of control on a drive to the rim. I think Jalen Wilson got him for a turnover on one of those. but that's, I think, freshman mistakes to some degree. Brock Cunningham, the other one, he very well. There's a very good argument for him to be deserving of a stud spot on this list. To come up with a team high 9 rebounds in 26 minutes off the bench, shooting 3 of 7 from the field, 2 of 4 from deep. I think he would have made another one from deep if he had just been a little bit more confident, a little bit more trigger happy. But 5 offensive rebounds, 3 assists, again, 1 turnover, 2 steals. He was a huge spark. Again, doing a lot of the dirty work, just kind of playing that Brock Cunningham basketball we've come to know and love in the last 2 years. But yeah, I'll give a rant here to end this reaction video. But I did my takeaways instead of my studs and duds piece after this game, and one of the biggest reasons for that was talking about this weird one-off scenario you have for the Longhorns this season where they're probably going to end up as a 2 seed on Selection Sunday tomorrow. But I don't know how much more broken the system could be if you're looking at this through a Longhorn scope than it is right now. I'm going to give 2 examples here. If I'm just looking at this, kind of zooming out from more of a Big 12 perspective instead of just a Longhorns perspective, you're going to see Kansas probably getting a 1 seed. Heading into this weekend, a lot of people were figuring Kansas was the top 1 seed, so the overall 1 seed, which I couldn't really argue a whole lot with. But you look back at it now, Texas has now beaten the team that was considered to be the top 1 seed by a combined margin of 36 points in the last 2 weekends. I don't know how much more crystal clear that could be that Texas should probably be ranked above them. I get that Kansas, at this point, they still have the better overall record. They do have a win over Texas this season by 8 points. But there's no way you can look at Kansas and Texas right now and say that Kansas is the better team. This was just a one-off. This is 2 different situations now where Kansas has been pretty much dismantled by the Longhorns. Been stifled offensively. They really couldn't get much consistent going defensively. And, if I'm looking at the other 1 seeds here, Houston, potentially Purdue, Alabama, and then UCLA also in the running, depending on what happens against Arizona tonight. Houston, I get the argument, but the American Athletic Conference is not a difficult conference to play in, especially compared to the Big 12. Sorry to the American, but that is just the dead-on case. I am a numbers guy here. If I can pull up the conference net ratings for college hoops on the season, Big 12 is first. Not just the most impressive conference in terms of net rating this season, but one of the most impressive in the modern era, actually. The American Athletic is 7th, below the ACC, Pac-12, and the Big East. Not that far above the Mountain West. And in terms of net conference win percentage, actually below the Mountain West. And then, even if you go lower on the list here, if you're looking at Alabama in the SEC, do I believe that Alabama should be a 1 seed? Maybe. I don't know. I think it depends on what happens against Texas A&M tomorrow. Alabama is a team that, I think a lot of people are going to bring this game up too much, but, they got catapulted by OU. Those sort of losses matter. That I think it was, what was it, a 25 or 30 point loss at the Lloyd Noble Center in Norman in the Big 12 SEC Challenge. Again, we're probably going to look back tomorrow and say that, Texas still isn't a good spot as a 2 seed. But to be in a spot where the selection committee might not bat an eye at putting Texas as a 2 seed is kind of preposterous, and shows that while there are all these sort of advanced metrics out there, net rating systems, a ton of good analytics out there, the selection committee is made up of a group largely that I don't think pays a ton of close attention to analytics, at least if you follow their selection patterns versus actual analytics. Doesn't line up very well. A good example of that is Oklahoma State probably being on the outside looking in tomorrow of Joe Lunardi's and Chris Palm's 8 bubble teams in terms of the last four in and the first four out, Oklahoma State is commonly rated highest in terms of net rating, especially I believe Ken Palm is the one I was looking at there. There, and then I think it was even in ESPN BPI, highest or second highest net rating of that group, that they're on the outside looking in. A lot of people accuse the college football playoff selection committee of being a what have you done for me lately group, whereas it almost feels like the college basketball selection committee needs more of that. I'm not saying to base it completely off of momentum, but this is the sort of decision tomorrow where, from a logistic perspective, I think most people would agree that Texas deserves a 1 seed over a team like Kansas. Sorry, but if you're Kansas, you should have played better. You can't get beat by 36 points in back-to-back weekends and say that, yeah, we deserve a 1 seed over a team like Texas. But I digress. I think that that's an argument that a lot of people are going to make, and one that might get pretty tired here in the next 24 hours. But it's one that needs to be talked about, and hopefully it's one that will bring about positive change to the selection committee process in college basketball, because I think at this point, for how much analytical support there is out there, and for how many good analytics and rating systems there are, I think it's probably time to look at it a little bit differently. Anyway, for Andrew Miller, hook'emheadlines.com. Happy to see Texas coming through with a huge win. That's pretty much it. Hook 'em.